Yeah, it was another absolutely gorgeous day today, and my plan was to make your video outdoors. But actually, I just didn't get time. I was working on your essays a good part of the day, and I just had other things I had to get done. So here we are on Sunday night making your video down in my basement. What a shame, because it was just too nice to do this. But I'll do better next week, and I'll try to find a really different location for next week, okay? Now, I commented in this week's lesson about your essays from last week. In general, they were very well done. I want to make sure you know that, okay? Because you really are doing what I'm looking for you to do. And in your comments, you're doing a very thorough job on there. I was so pleased that nobody said something like, "Oh, I really like what you said," and that's all they said. No, everybody went into detail as if they liked something, they liked it. But more importantly, and this is really interesting to me because this is the first time I've had a class that was so good at this right away. You were not afraid to disagree with what some people said, or you were not afraid to say, "Oh, I didn't see that in there." That's terrific. What that tells me and each other is that we're learning from each other, and that's what we want to happen in this course. Because literature isn't just what I want you to think it is, or what some critic wants you to think it is. Literature really has to have meaning for you as a reader. And so when you get a meaning and then you read somebody else's meaning and that broadens your meaning or even changes your meaning, that's really a big part of what we're all about. So again, none of you seem to be afraid to express your ideas. That was good. That was excellent. Excellent. Okay. As a class, this may be the best set of first essays I've ever had. A couple of people were afraid to go into detail or didn't want to take the time to go into detail on things. We need to tell people what we need, and we need to follow the directions. Like a couple of people only wrote about one work and showed irony in there, and they went deeply into that. But the assignment asks you for more than that, okay? So please make sure you do what the assignment says. So right now I have to tell you I am extremely pleased with what you're doing, okay? Good work. Keep it up. Now, this week we move on to the concept of plot. And I explain in a lot of detail in the lesson what plot is. Briefly, it's a series of interrelated actions by which we couldn't have a story. And conflict is part of the plot. But it's important this week, and this is why it was really important for me to make a video for you. It's important for you to understand that plot does not have to go in a straight line, okay? Most of the time, the things that we read go in a straight line. They start here, and then something happens here, and something happens here, and something happens here. The story we're reading this week is very different from that. And so in my lesson this week, I encourage you to create a timeline of happenings, because instead of the story starting here and going to here, you actually start here. Now, you may be seeing all of this in reverse, I'm not sure. But you actually start here and then hop back to here and touch some things here and some here and then back here, and then end up all the way back where you started, which was at the ending, okay? So the story starts and ends, in a sense, at the same place. But it touches a lot of things that help you understand how you get to that ending, okay? So read the story carefully. And again, don't be confused by the fact that this is not a linear plot, meaning a plot going in a straight line. It bounces around. Starting from where the story actually begins at the end, in a sense, the whole story is a series of flashbacks, okay? Now, we know what flashbacks are. We see them on TV shows. We see them in movies. Well, here you see it in a piece of literature. So be looking for that. Be aware of that. And as I say, a timeline is not a bad idea. We're at the very end of the story when we start. And then somewhere along the line in the story, we talk about a terrible smell coming. What's that all about? Okay. And when you get to the end, you'll know what that is. In fact, that's my question for you this week that I want you to email me the answer to. The question is, what causes that terrible smell that the townspeople want to get rid of by spreading lime in Emily's yard? Okay, they think maybe that rats or something had created some kind of an awful smell. So as you read the story, what is that terrible smell? What causes the terrible smell? Okay, and you'll understand that when you get to the very end of the story. The very end of the story, okay? Also, when you get to the very end of the story, it brings everything together. You'll find out more. You'll find out what happens to Homer Barron, okay? And that's a critical part. Also, as you are reading the story, there are a few very small details specifically about Homer Barron. There's a lot of small details, but there's one specifically about Homer Barron that may, in fact, be the real cause of the gigantic conflict in the story. There's a bunch of conflicts, some big, some smaller, but there's one gigantic conflict, okay? And it really brings about what happens, what we find out happened at the end of the story. So I hope I'm not confusing you, but pay attention as you read about Homer Barron, and maybe you'll understand more about Miss Emily also. Okay, Emily's a strong person. She represents, and I say this in the notes, she represents the Old South, and she doesn't realize that the Old South, where the families who had money were revered, and what they said was the most important and such, Emily, kind of represents that, but that South is gone now. We've gone to a newer South, an industrialized South, a South where life goes on rather than the old sit on your veranda and drink lemonade and watch the slaves work in the cotton fields. That South is long gone, thank goodness. Okay, I mean the gentility of the South was wonderful, but the fact that they took advantage of people, with the thing that we called slavery, is obviously something terrible, and fortunately something that's 154 years in our past, right? January 1st, 1863 was the Emancipation Proclamation ending slavery. Okay, so this story is well after that. Slavery is over, but some of the old-timers in the South, not that they still believed in slavery, but they believed that those that had money and owned plantations were elite and different from the rest of the world, and the South has changed from that by and large. Emily doesn't want to accept that. Anyway, again, this plot jumps around, starts at the end, takes us to different places, and ends in the end. So be aware of that as you read this story. Read it to enjoy it, but be aware of that and look out for that as you go through it, and then write your essay. And as I said in the assignment, get the essay posted by Friday evening, and then come back in and do your responses to it by Saturday afternoon. Okay? Have a great week, and I probably won't talk to you again before Labor Day, so have a good Labor Day too. Okay? Thanks.